RDP files contain all the settings used by a remote desktop connection. These are highly customizable files that can be deployed to your users via login scripts or run from a network share. Once you have set up remote desktop connection the way you want it, you can save the settings into an RDP file and deploy them to your users. The file contains the server and applications you want to connect to, so you can create a different RDP file for different applications. The settings used by a remote desktop connection can also be deployed via group policy. Let's have a look how to create and use RDP files. To display the remote desktop connections options, select the options button at the bottom of the remote desktop connections dialog. This will display all the options tabs. Notice at the bottom of the general tab, you have the save and open buttons. Once you have the settings the way you want them, you can press the save button and these will be saved to the file default.rdp in your documents folder. Each time you start remote desktop connection, these will be the settings that will be used. If you wish to save these settings to another file, press the Save As button. If you have multiple servers and settings, you can save all these settings to different files. These files can then be distributed to your users. All they need to do is double-click the file to launch remote desktop connection with those settings. On this tab, you have the display settings. You can change the size of the remote desktop window by moving the slide bar left and right. By default, the desktop connection will be displayed in full screen mode. Some companies have a standard resolution that they like to run in, or an application that works best in a particular resolution. If this is the case, you can set the resolution here and the desktop for remote desktop connection will appear in this resolution. Next you have the number of colors that will be displayed. If you don't need a lot of colors, I would recommend reducing the number of colors shown here. Less colors means less processing power and memory used on the server. For the end user, less colors means a faster, more responsive session. If you connect over a slow link, reducing the colors can make a big difference to the speed and responsiveness of your session. The last setting, display the connection bar in full screen, displays a title bar at the top of the screen, letting you know which server you are connected to. You can also disconnect and minimize the screen using the title bar. You can switch this off, however, switching the title bar off can confuse the end user. Users can get confused in full screen mode without the title bar because they forget if they are working on their local PC or a remote desktop. The title bar helps to remind them they are using a remote desktop and also helps you identify which desktop you are using when you have multiple desktops running. Your local resource tab determines which resources are available during your session. Keep in mind that if a resource has been disabled on the server, you cannot enable it here. From here, you can enable, disable, or leave the sound on the remote computer. Leaving the sound on the remote computer still plays the sound, but the audio is not transferred over the connection. The next setting will determine how Alt Tab will work when pressed. Lastly, you can disable local printing and the clipboard. If you want more options, press the button More and you can disable or enable smart cards, local drives, and plug-and-play devices. If you have a user which is getting confused by the extra options, you may want to disable them. Disabling the clipboard can help you when you are on a slow connection. If the user attempts to paste a large amount from the clipboard by mistake, the connection can freeze. Plug and play, USB drives, and other devices can confuse the end user. When they plug these devices in, they expect to see them on their local computer. However, they may get diverted to the terminal services session instead. If this is occurring, consider switching these options off. The Program tab allows you to start up a program when you start a new session. This can be used to display things like terms and conditions or automatically run a particular program on startup. If the end user only connects to a particular server to run a specialized application, you may want to consider getting this application to start automatically for them. The Experience tab allows you to disable certain user interface options. Disabling options generally makes your sessions run faster and use less network bandwidth. If you select your connection type from the pull-down list, Remote Desktop Connection will suggest settings for this particular type of connection. Otherwise, you can enable and disable settings as you wish. On a slow connection, you can deselect all these options to improve your connection. However, I would suggest leaving on bitmap caching. The caching keeps a local copy of bitmaps and can improve the speed of your session over a slow network. The Advanced tab allows you to configure server authentication and the Terminal Services Gateway feature. Server authentication is a feature available in Windows Vista and Windows Server 2008. When you deploy Terminal Services, you will need to configure the clients that connect to it. The best way to do this is through Group Policy. Using Group Policy allows you to set and enforce Terminal Services settings. The Group Policy settings are found in both Computer Configuration and User Configuration in Group Policy under Policies, Administrative Templates, Windows Components, Terminal Services. It is a good idea to have a look through the settings to see what is available. In particular, you may want to configure Single Sign-On. When this is set, the RDP client will pass the current user credentials to the terminal server rather than prompting for credentials. This makes Terminal Services a much more transparent solution and easier for the end user to use. To enable Single Sign-On, edit the setting Credential Delegation. Once you have enabled Single Sign-On, you will also need to enter the names of your terminal servers. These are in the form term-srv/server name. If you want to allow all terminal servers, use term-srv/*. There are a lot of settings in Group Policy for terminal services. The Computer Configuration allows you to specify client settings, such as saving passwords on the local computer and which resources should be directed to the Terminal Services session. User Configuration allows you to set settings related to user session times, remote control, and session configuration. Using Group Policy allows you to centralize your management of terminal services, making it easier to administer. When configuring terminal services for your end users, spend some time going through the RDP settings and also the Group Policy settings. Having these settings correct can improve your end user's experience in terminal services and make your job a lot easier.